Hey everyone, how's it going? Week 7 college football. Let's get it started. So today I'm looking at 17 games across week 7 in college football. First game I'm taking a look at today is between New Mexico State and Jacksonville State. So I see New Mexico State as a pretty weak team, both offense and defense. They're not particularly that great. We kind of all know that. They tend to play a slower game. They tend to be more of a run-first team. Looking at Jacksonville State, offense is much better than defense, but still not very good. They tend to play a faster game, but they're a very heavy focused team on the run. So with that combined, I took Jacksonville State under 57.5 at -110, and I took that at Caesars. So I think with both teams being run first teams, they're going to grind the clock out. I think New Mexico State won't put up very much points. I think Jacksonville State may, but with the fact that I see them having the ball more and playing more of a slow tempo, I think that they'll kind of grind the clock out a little bit and lead to an under. So the next game that I was taking a look at is between Coastal Carolina and James Madison University. So Coastal Carolina, perennial team. I have bet them a lot this season. Offense is really slightly below average. Defense is pretty below average. They tend to play a very slow game with that tempo rank. So they're the 112th slowest playing team in college football this year. As well, they tend to be a little bit more run focused. James Madison University, despite the large amount of points they scored a few weeks ago, I have them ranked better on defense than they are on offense. Their offense is above average. Their defense is pretty significantly above average. They play about an average tempo, and they tend to be slightly more focused on throwing the ball. But in this game, there's a decently high total at 59.5, so I took the under at FanDuel. So I think, again, a slower-paced game with Coastal Carolina. The better defense of James Madison should prevent some of the points being scored there, so I think it'll come in under the total. So moving on to the next game I have between Memphis and South Florida. So Memphis is a pretty good team on offense, really in the top 30. Their defense needs a lot of work, though. They're around an average tempo. They tend to be more throwing than running the ball. South Florida, slightly below average offense. They have very weak defense. They tend to play very quick. They tend to be really more balanced between pass and throw. In this game, I took Memphis -6 at -110, and I took that at Caesars. So I think Memphis is the much better team here. Offense is a lot better. Defense is better. I'm willing to lay the 6 points on the road with a team that's clearly the better of this particular matchup. So the next game I'm taking a look at is between UNLV and Utah State. So UNLV, a great offense, a very weak defense, really an average tempo, tends to be a lot more focused on the run. Looking at Utah State, not a great team all around. Offense is slightly below average. Their defense is very weak. They tend to play a faster game. They tend to be more focused on the ball. However, with Utah State being at home, they're getting 19 points. So I was able to get that at +100 at Caesars. So 19 points is a lot to lay on the road. UNLV is not great on defense. Utah State, I still have their offense ranked better than UNLV's defense. I think they'll be able to put some points. Hopefully they'll be able to put up enough points to really stay in this game, but still laying 19 on the road is not a good situation. Getting 19 at home is a good one. So I took the points at home on Utah State, +100, and I took that at Caesars. So moving on to the South, I'm looking at South Carolina versus Alabama. So starting with Alabama this time, Alabama I have ranked first in offense. They ranked in the top 20 in defense, tend to play a slower game, tend to be a lot more focused on the run. South Carolina, a very good defense, an average offense. They tend to play a little bit slightly faster than average. They also tend to be a little bit more run focused. So with that said, South Carolina is getting 22 points, which is a lot to lay. Team like South Carolina, where they're decent on defense. I mean, they're not as good on defense as Alabama is on offense, but they're not a horribly bad defensive team. With getting so many points, I think it's a good bet to take South Carolina here. I think that they'll be able to hang in the game enough to not lose by greater than 3 touchdowns. So I took South Carolina +22 at -110. I took that at bet 365. So continuing in the South, I'm looking at the game between Clemson and Wake Forest. So Clemson is a great team. They're top 20, top 15 really offense. They're in the top 25 in defense. Tend to be more of a throwing team. Wake Forest is really, they're above average on offense, but not by very much. Their defense is weaker than average. Faster playing team, a team that likes to throw. But in this game again, Wake Forest is getting 20.5 at home. So I took that at bet 365 again. Wake Forest is an okay team. They're really an average team. Clemson's a much better team here, but given the fact that they are on the road, Wake Forest is at home, getting that big amount of points at home. I'll usually take those in the situation as long as the team is not completely terrible. So the numbers I have say that Wake Forest is an average team. The calculation and model that I ran said that Wake Forest was the play here at +20.5 at -110. So continuing on, I'm looking at the game between Georgia Tech and North Carolina. So Georgia Tech is a good team on offense. They're an average team on defense. North Carolina is really more balanced between the two of them. They're both better than average in both defense and offense. Georgia Tech tends to run the ball more. They tend to play a little bit slower. North Carolina is the opposite. They tend to play a little bit quicker, and they tend to throw the ball a little bit more. So with that said, North Carolina is getting 6 at home. I think the fact that North Carolina is better on defense will allow them to stay in this game. 6 points is still a decent amount. Georgia Tech's played some great games recently. That's true. But North Carolina is a decent team. They're getting the points. They're at home. So I took North Carolina plus the 6 here. Minus 108, and I took that at DraftKings. So moving to Ohio, I'm taking a look at the game between Ball State and Kent State. So both of these are very weak teams. With college football, these are some of the weakest teams there are. Ball State's really almost last in defense. Their offense is particularly much better. Kent State is weak in both, almost the weakest team on both offense and defense. With the tempos, both these teams tend to play a slower game. Kent State tends to run more. Ball State tends to pass more. But in this game, again, Kent State's getting a significant amount of points at home, 6.5. And I got that at minus 108 at DraftKings. As well, I took Ball State and Kent State under 57.5 at minus 110. And I took that at bet 365. So with both of these teams, they're both pretty horrible all around. They both tend to play slow. And 57.5 is a decent total, a relatively high total, not a high total for college football, but a higher total for college football. So with these two teams combined, I think it's going to be a sloppy, low-scoring game. I think that Kent State may lose, maybe by 3, but they'll hang on enough here at home to not lose by more than 6.5 points. So moving to a game between actually decent teams, I'm taking a look at Louisville versus Virginia. So Louisville is really balanced on defense and offense, both really in the mid-20s, which puts them significantly above average in both of those. They tend to play a slower pace. They tend to be slightly more of a throwing team. West Virginia, defense than offense. As well, they tend to play slightly above average, but they're really balanced between pass and run. In this game, because Louisville is a slower playing team, their defense is significantly better than Virginia's offense, and there's less of a spread between the offense of Louisville versus the defense of Virginia. I took under 57 at minus 110 at bet 365. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I think there's a lot of value here in the under. So continuing on, I'm taking a look at the game between Purdue and Illinois. So Purdue's a weaker team. Offense and defense is around the same value. They're significantly below average. Illinois has a below average offense. They have a decent defense. The tempos between the two teams should lead to a slightly slower than average game. I was able to get Purdue plus 20 at minus 112, and I took that at DraftKings. So the offense for Illinois is not that great, and in order for me to want to lay 20 points, I would need to have a team that had a significantly better offense than the opposing defense. In this particular case, I don't have Illinois' offense ranked that much better than Purdue's. Purdue will maybe struggle to score points, but I could see it being a low-scoring affair where Purdue hangs in there. Maybe they lose by 2 touchdowns. Maybe they kick a field goal at the end to cover that 20, but I think the play in this particular game is Purdue. They're the worst team, but I don't think they're that much worse. 20 points is a significant amount of points to lay. So the next game I wanted to cover is between Cincinnati and Central Florida. So Cincinnati, a good offense, a weaker defense, a slower playing pace. With Central Florida, a good offense, an okay defense, a little bit quicker of a pace, but they tend to be heavily focused on running the ball. So for this particular game, though, again, a higher total at 59.5. So I took the under at FanDuel at minus 110. So with the fact that Central Florida tends to run the ball, the offenses are not that much better than the defenses. You know, looking at the difference, it's maybe a 30 rank spread between Cincinnati's offense and Central Florida's defense. The other way, it's about a 34-point spread. They should score some points. 59.5 is a pretty significant amount. So I think the right play here is under 59.5 minus 110, and I took that at FanDuel. So staying in a similar neighborhood, I'm looking at the game between Old Dominion and Georgia State. So Old Dominion, weak offense, weak defense, but they play a very up-tempo, quick offense. When I look at Georgia State, their offense is better than their defense. They're both not very good. They also play a faster than average pace. They tend to be heavily focused on running the ball. So despite the fact that neither of them are particularly good teams, they're not really good on defense either. So I took over 54.5 at minus 110, and I took that at ESPN bet. So between the high tempo, the weakness on defense, and I mean, in this particular case, like, yeah, the offenses aren't great either, but the offensive ranks ranks are higher than the defensive ranks on both sides of the ball here. You have a team that throws a lot with Georgia State, and you have a very fast tempo. So I think the right side on this one is Old Dominion and Georgia State over 54.5 at -110, and I took that at ESPN bet. So in a game that people may actually want to watch is the game between Mississippi State and Georgia. So Mississippi State's a weaker team. They're really about an average team. Georgia, everybody knows they're a great team. They're top 10 offense and defense. They're good on both sides of the ball. They tend to play a little bit of a slower game. They tend to be more run focused. So if you followed my picks this season, I took Kentucky against Georgia and they covered. I took Alabama against Georgia and they covered. I took Auburn this last week against Georgia and they also covered. So I'm making it a fourth time. I'm taking Mississippi State plus 34.5 at -105, and I took that at FanDuel. So the problem with Georgia is Georgia's a great team, and it's true. Georgia tends to play a slower game, and they tend to not put up a lot of points. So I think that Mississippi State will be able to hang in there. They may score a few points, enough to cover the 34.5. Based on my numbers, Georgia is a good team, but not a team that's going to score a lot of points. And if they're not going to score a lot of points, I wouldn't lay 34 with them. I'd rather take it. So that's what I did in this game. Mississippi State plus 34.5 -105, and I took that at FanDuel. So continuing on, I'm looking at Florida versus Tennessee. So Florida has a great offense. They have a above average defense, play a slower game. Tennessee, great on both sides of the ball. Their defense is slightly better than their offense, but both are very good. They tend to be more of a run-focused team. Theme for this week, really, for me, is these big underdogs. So I took Florida plus 15.5 at -110, and I took that at FanDuel. So again, Florida's not a horrible team. They're a good team. And if you give me a good team that's getting a lot of points, I'll take it. It's a lot of times it's good value in these particular situations. Florida's offense is not that far behind Tennessee's defense. I mean, their defense is behind Tennessee's offense, but Florida should still be able to score some points. And if they score enough, then it's going to be difficult for Tennessee to cover 15.5, more than 2 touchdowns. I don't think Florida's a team that's going to lay down and get a lot of points scored on them without scoring anything. So theme for this week, there's a lot of big underdogs that I feel have a lot of value. Florida's added to that list. So I took Florida plus 15.5 at -110, and I took that at FanDuel. So moving on to really a lower profile game between University of Texas San Antonio, UTSA, against Rice. So again, neither of these are particularly great teams. Their offenses are about tied. Their defenses, UTSA has a slight edge, but I mean, it's not very much at this point. You know, the difference in 3 ranks when you're in the hundreds is not particularly that much strength. So UTSA is slightly a better team. They tend to play a little bit faster. Rice tends to play a little bit slower. They both tend to be more passing teams. But in this particular game, I took Rice plus 4.5 at -110, and I took UTSA and Rice over 47.5 at -110 as well. So the offenses here are better than both the defenses. Not by much. They're neither of them are particularly great offensive teams, but they're not great defensive teams either. UTSA tends to play a faster game, so the pace of this game should be above average. As well, both of these are throwing teams, especially Rice. Rice throws the ball significantly more than they run it, which can lead to big plays. It can lead to them using less clock and really speed up the game. So I think the right play in this game is to take Rice at home, getting the points, because again, they're not that far behind. 4.5 at home would, is pretty decent amount, especially when the opponent's not that great. As well, I like the over here. 2 passing teams, a faster playing game. Both offenses are better than both defenses. I'll take it. It's a small amount of points, 47.5 for college football though. One of the games that I'm excited for this week is between Iowa State and West Virginia. So Iowa State is above average offense, but a very good defense. West Virginia is really the opposite. They have a good offense, an average defense. Iowa State and West Virginia both tend to play very slow as well. They both tend to be focused more on the run, especially West Virginia. So in the game between the two of them, though, the total's 51.5. So I took the under at -110, and I took that at FanDuel. Again, the defense of Iowa State is better. The spread between the offense of Iowa State and the defense of West Virginia is not that big. As well, 2 slow playing teams, 2 teams that like to run. I like the under here, 51.5, and I took that at FanDuel. And so the last game that I wanted to cover for week 7 in college football is Air Force versus New Mexico. So Air Force has a weak offense. They have a slightly below average defense. They tend to play a very slow game. Again, they're service academies. Service academies play slow. They like to run. New Mexico, not a great offense, not a great defense either. Tend to play about average. But in this game, I actually took 2 picks. I took Air Force plus 4.5 and Air Force New Mexico under 54.5 at minus 110. So I think that Air Force has the edge there. Their offense is better than New Mexico's defense, as well their defense is better than New Mexico's offense. Unlike Army, another service academy, Air Force doesn't really have as much of the skill that Army would have, where Army can run, but they can still put up points. I think that so far this season, Air Force's offense is not rated that well. With that slow tempo, with running the ball, they're going to grind a lot of the clock out. New Mexico State's not that much better. I think the defense of Air Force will keep them in check, leading to Air Force winning the game or losing by less than 4.5 points, and the two scores combined being under 54.5. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Bye.